everybody, welcome to Go Bold. My name is Jody Tariwala and I'm your host. In episode 1, we introduced you to the Halifax class frigate of the Royal Canadian Navy. There are 5 Halifax class frigates based at Canadian Forces Base Esquimalt, which is just behind me. These ships are the primary surface combatant for the Navy. And in episode 1, we introduced you to what's known as the command triad. And that comprises the commanding officer, the executive officer, and the coxswain. And together, these individuals come together to lead the ship. In this episode, we begin with an interview with Vice Admiral Angus Topshee, who at the time was Rear Admiral Topshee, and he was commander of Maritime Forces Pacific. The Admiral shared his motivation to serve and what it was like to lead the formation, and he shared a bit about the ships that were under his command, including the Halifax class. Vice Admiral Topshee is now the commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, so we feel very fortunate that we got his insight into the Navy itself. We continue with Lieutenant Commander Justin Simmons, who is the executive officer of HMCS Ottawa. Lieutenant Commander Simmons was very kind to give us an above-deck tour of HMCS Ottawa. We also had the very rare opportunity to visit below the waterline of a Halifax-class frigate. And you might ask how we got to do that. Well, HMCS Ottawa was in dry dock for a short period of time, so we had a wonderful opportunity to go beneath the ship and get a tour of an area that few people ever get to see. So welcome everybody to Go Bold, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Admiral Topshee, thank you so much for joining me on Go Bold. It's great to have you on the show. Tell me a little bit about what made you join the military? What considerations did you have in doing so? And tell me a little bit about why you picked the branch that you specifically did.
Well, first of all, I didn't pick the Navy. I actually picked the Air Force.
Oh, no kidding.
I joined from a desire to attend the Royal Military College in Kingston. I got the idea in my head somewhere that that was the place to go to school. My parents loved the idea that they'd pay for my 4 years of university education. And I loved the idea of serving my country. So I joined the Air Force. I went out to Portage La Prairie in my first summer in the military. And after 17.2 hours of military flying time, the Air Force decided that perhaps I should try something else. And eventually I found myself in the Navy, which was great. My grandfather served in World War II on the North Atlantic run, up in Murmansk run as well, around the world actually in the Royal Canadian Navy, and so I was proud to follow in that tradition. And it's just been a wonderful blessing for the 32 years I've been in uniform to serve the country and see the world.
Yeah.
I've been to every continent except Antarctica. I've sailed in pretty much every ocean and sea there is. The 3 things that I've got left to do on my bucket list in terms of nautical operations are: I've never been around Cape Horn in a ship. I've never sailed through the Great Lakes and into the St. Lawrence Seaway and into the Great Lakes in a warship. And until recently, I didn't have anything else that I added on the list, but now I have to add Transit the Northwest Passage on a Canadian warship because Harry DeWolf did it last year, and now I'm incredibly jealous the sailors had that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. It would be an excellent experience. Tell me, over the years, you've now been serving for how many years?
It's coming up on 32 pretty soon.
On 32. So how have you seen the Navy change and evolve over that time?
It's been pretty interesting. The Navy I joined was a Navy that had just come through the Cold War, so I joined in 1990. As I did my first sailing and experience, all of the people who were sailing those ships had been ready to operate in the North Atlantic to defend convoys resupplying Europe in the event of World War III against the Soviet Union. And then we went through a couple of decades where the focus was on keeping the seas free and open for everybody, on the free flow of commerce around the world, dealing with sanctions and enforcement of UN resolutions in the Middle East, and anti-piracy operations off the coast of Somalia and other places around the world, doing humanitarian assistance, disaster relief in places like Haiti. So we were a Navy that was really focused on maintaining peace in a peaceful world. And now, we seem to be heading back to a period of time where there are real world threats to that international peace and stability. We need to be prepared to fight peer competitors on the high seas, and that is changing the dynamic of the Navy again, forcing us to go back to those warrior spirit, the real warfare focus that we had in the Navy that I joined, and that rightly we focus on what we needed to be done. And so the Canadian Navy always needs to adapt to what's needed, and I look forward to us adapting to reflect the current security environment.
And in that context, or I guess in that same vein, you have to adapt to exactly what you're being called upon. And so obviously the world situation is as it is today, but there's also domestic duties that the people in your formation have to deal with as well.
That's right. And so one of the great things is the Harry DeWolf class that we've introduced to service. And so the fact that now we've got a ship that can go through the northern reaches of Canada, patrol that third coastline that has always been the purview of the Coast Guard, but now the Navy's got a presence up there because we're seeing increased challenges to sovereignty and security around the world. And while we don't really see a lot of that in the north right now, we want to be prepared and ready to respond to it. So it's great that the Navy's got the ability to go up there. But the more impressive thing about the Harry DeWolf class is it's got the ability to carry a whole lot of stuff, and it's got the sea-to-shore connectors to be able to deliver effect from the water onto land. And so if that was helping an isolated community along the BC coast deal with an emergency, the Harry DeWolf class will bring that capability, and throughout the Atlantic Canada region as well.
Awesome. Tell me about some of the ships in the Navy, because depending on what somebody is interested in, they could go various different paths.
Yeah, so I mean, the frigates have been modernized. The combat system has been upgraded to the modern threat environment. We are probably among the world leaders in anti-submarine warfare, and the Air Force as well has kept up in that field. So I would say that the niche that we would be best suited for is anti-submarine warfare. Since we decommissioned the destroyers, we're not where we need to be on air defense, which is why the Canadian Surface Combatant is such an important project for the Canadian Navy. And we offer an incredible network. Our command and control system is world leading. In fact, it's being purchased by Chile and by New Zealand because they recognize the quality of that Canadian development. And so, our ability to integrate sensors from all sorts of different nations to communicate with allies around the world and to operate at the heart of any task group that we are a part of is really one of the great things that we bring.
Talk to me about the Navy, how it's changed in terms of the cross-section of people that have come into the service. I had the fortune to go on HMCS Winnipeg recently, and I was actually pleasantly surprised by the various backgrounds, colors, races, ethnicities. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we're still not where we need to be. So the reality is today, the Canadian Armed Forces is 71% white male, and that is not what Canada is, and that's not what we need to be. So we're working hard to change that. The Navy I joined, women were serving in the Navy, but in very small numbers. In fact, I served on ships that had as few as just a single woman on board. But I've also served on ships that have had up 30% on board. And one just interesting combination of circumstances where, despite the fact that the Navy only has about 15% of its ranks are women, we had 30% on one ship, and it was a wonderful dynamic on that ship. And you're right, the diversity in the Canadian Armed Forces is growing steadily. It's really good in the Naval Reserves. Every chance I get to out to see a Naval Reserve division where I really see Canada reflected there. And what we need to do is make sure we maintain that diverse and inclusive workplace so that those people continue to move up through the ranks, and so that we see more of that. And one of the things I'm most proud of right now is HMCS Winnipeg is commanded by Nick Fontaine. Megan Coates will take over Calgary, I think, later this year. Regina, actually. So we're going to have 2 women commanding frigates on the West Coast. So that's 40% of the West Coast frigates will be commanded by women. Out here, we've got Nadia Shields is commanding Saskatoon down on deployed operations. Maud Willette-Savard is commanding our fleet school, responsible for training and creating all sorts of new people into the Canadian Navy. So it's fantastic to see how well women have done in the Navy, and now we need to do a better job to make sure that all of that diversity from different cultures and different ethnicities is reflected in the Navy as well.
Right on. So what would you say to people who are interested in the Navy or in the Canadian Armed Forces as a career? For those people that might not be familiar with military service, what could they expect?
Well, the first thing I tell them is don't make my mistake, just join the Navy straight off the bat. And that we really do have the value proposition to join the Navy, see the world. We are a globally deployable Navy, a globally employed Navy. Our ships go around the world. In fact, we've got sailors right now down in Antarctica. We've got sailors that operate regularly in the Arctic. We've got sailors right now in Europe, and we're deploying 2 ships and an entire task group across to Asia Pacific later this year. We've just had 2 ships come back from Africa. So if you join the Navy, you're going to see the world. You're going to do great things for Canada. And the value proposition for the Navy is you can serve your country, see the world, and make a difference.
Awesome.
Now it's time to do the above deck tour. So let's take a tour of HMCS Ottawa. Come with me.
Awesome.
So as you're aware, 12 of these ships, 12 frigates. This is the youngest one. These are strategic assets for the government of Canada because each one's worth about $1 billion, right? Actually, what's interesting is the last working period that they had, they put about $100 million worth of metal work and other stuff into it. So just to keep it sustained for the next 20 or so years. So now we're on the flight deck. What's crazy is when you start seeing, it's hard to get a real perspective until you actually see one of our Cyclone CH-148s on board because it fills the flight deck. Of course, in order to make sure we have it at sea, they've got to fold it up and bring it into the hangar. So the Cyclone was heavier than the Sea King. So the last work period, they had to do modifications as far as light placement, reinforcing the deck and all that, just to make sure that they could actually land it safely over the next period of time. So this does hold and host the CH-148 Cyclone. We actually have an air det on board, which is a bit unique because we're not quite at the same readiness level as a deployer. We're just about to do that, but we've had our air det since last June. So, and we're very proud of it. They've done a lot of work. So, as you're going to see some people that are going to be doing some exercise. It's that time of day when each day we exercise the duty watch just to make sure that we're fresh. A couple other things I'll point out. You can see up top, on top of the hangar, I call it R2-D2. It's actually the close-in weapon system. So this multi-point or single-point defense missile ship, right? So this ship is meant to defend itself. It has various stages as far as accomplishing that with different weaponry and sensors. If the Sea Whiz is going off, that's your last chance, right? It's very effective though. It puts out over 2,000 bullets per minute, or its capability is to put out over 2,000 bullets a minute. Essentially, it's a lead ball. Let's head forward into the hangar. So, the hangar. You can see it's a lot smaller than what the flight deck is. In order to fit the helicopter in here, there's a lot of folding that they have to do. What's really neat is bear trap. So just below this cover is a bear trap. It's Canadian design. It's meant to actually help with the landing of the helicopter. So essentially like a cable would come down from the helicopter. This would attach on and it would actually use a mechanism to pull the Cyclone down, the helicopter down onto the ground. So really its design is meant to, in heavy sea state, or if it's a training purpose for the pilots, that's what they use it for. But this is the pilot space. We always keep it set up so that they can access it even when they're not here. We'll head over here. On ships that don't have a Sea King or a Cyclone, they would use this space as a gym, which is pretty conventional. But you'll see throughout Ottawa, we've got gym equipment everywhere. So the ship is in a short work period right now while we're in dock. Normally we would have a full complement of weaponry and the actual ammunition on board. We've had to take that off in order to go into dock, but I'll still explain some of the spots for it. So it's an anti-submarine warfare platform, right? So we have torpedoes. Now, this ship is not really geared to use the torpedoes. It would rather have the helicopter go out and use the torpedoes, but we do have a way to defend ourselves against submarine threats, and that's use of torpedoes on both the port and the starboard side, or the left and right hand side of the ship. Right here, so would normally be housed our harpoons. That's our ship-to-ship warfare defense mechanism. So it's a harpoon, it's a big missile. It goes out about 70 plus miles from the ship, so over 120 kilometers away from the ship, in order to defend the ship from another surface threat if required. And then just forward of that is our ESM missile. So the missile is set up for anti-air warfare. So this is really to go out and touch someone, right? If the ship has an organic threat that is coming towards it and it needs to be able to neutralize it, the ESM would be set up for that. So we've got 240 personnel on board, and in the event that someone would go overboard, we have set up so that we have boats on both the port and starboard side, or the left hand or right hand side of the ship. And really that's set up so that we can recover personnel if required. We have Zodiacs, 2 Zodiacs, and then 1 rigid hull inflatable boat. That rib holds about over 12 people, and that's really set up for our naval boarding party, or NTOG, so Naval Tactical Operation Group. We can use that if we had to do some kind of maritime interdiction. When you're out at sea, the ship can stay out at sea indefinitely as long as it can get food and fuel. So we actually fuel up when we're out at sea. We can conduct these things called replenishments at sea. Essentially, there's another ship about 36 to 50 meters away from the ship, and while we are going through the water, we get our food and fuel as a provision. Some of these hoses will facilitate that. Best part of the ship, so this is where you get a good view of the really the weaponry and the overall capability of these ships. So you got the 57mm bow first. It's kind of a small weapon when it comes to naval guns. However, our gun is very accurate, and it's used predominantly, as I said, for the single point missile defense ship. So this would be one of the things, if the missile didn't take out the target, this is very accurate as far as aiming and being able to actually take out or neutralize any threat. It's a fantastic gun for doing gunnery with and all that. So you got 2 cables here. This one is our working cable. It's set up for if the ship was taken out and needed to be under tow in order to get out of danger. This would be a way for us to hook up to another ship using a seamanship evolution for that. It's not used often, but the most prominent time that it is used on the coast here is when we have to go to one of the Navy buoys. So if you see one of those buoys out in the water, the large one with the Navy side on it, you'll see it off of Esquimalt Harbor. That's where we can actually go alongside. It's essentially like going to anchor. And of course, we got the anchor cable and the anchor. It's about 2,800 kilograms or 2,800 pounds of weight. The anchor cable is set up so that it can hold the ship in any sort of conditions. There's 8 shackles. Each shackle's about 90 feet. So it can really hold it. It's designed so that when you are in a position where you can't be at sea, but you need to go somewhere safely, you can go to anchor. And of course, from here you get to see all of the sensors and weapons that we have for the ship. So starting right from the top, there's a number of sensors that help us as far as making sure that we can hear acoustics. They're passive sensors for any other platform that may be out there. You can see the large radar there just about halfway down. And if you were in Halifax, you would actually be able to see contacts, air contacts, fairly far away. Someone said as far away as PEI, so over 200 kilometers away. what the ship does is it would pick up a target using the 3D radar, and it actually formulates it, uses the command management system or the combat management system on board ship to tell you whether it's a threat or whether it's actually like it could be a regular air contact, like an Air Canada flight. What that does is it takes the target, and then it would pass it if it was a hostile target. It could pass to one of the other sensors in order to actually put energy on it, and that's most predominantly with the fire control radar. So just above the Raytheon, you can see the fire control radar, and that would be used for firing the main gun.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That, my friends, was the Executive Officer of HMCF Ottawa, Justin Simmons. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Jody.
Thank you very much. This is an awesome above deck tour of the Halifax class frigate.
Hey Jody, so XO Ottawa here. We're going to head down below underneath the ship. It's a unique opportunity because not often do you get to go underneath the ship and still stay dry. The most important thing about this is going to be able to see really how big the ship actually is, because it's hard to really gain that perspective. What I hope that you gather from it is just how cool it is and how much engineering design was behind underneath the ship, and just to keep it as a warship, maneuverable ship. Yeah,
Awesome.
So let's go see.
Lead on. Thank you.
Yeah, so this dry dock, interesting story about it, is it was part of the deal for Confederation. And as you see, like, a lot of it is sandstone. So someone told me that a lot of this was ballast stones, but I think that was just part of the story. But the most important thing is they needed to have a dry dock on the west coast. So part of Confederation, this was part of the deal.
Awesome. And to what degree of the ship is underneath the water when it's in the water?
Yeah, so you can see, so the black paint up there is called boot topping.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Hey Tim, how's it going? Good, how are you doing? Good. It's going to get a little noisy. So that black part is the boot topping, and then the blue part is all underneath. So from the boot topping down is what you would have under the water, and it could be as much as 7.5 meters. So about 25, 30 feet.
Underwater.
Yeah, underwater. Cool. The most important thing, I want to show you the crash block. So, literally, the weight of the ship when it came into dock. So what they did is they brought us in with tugs. They had one tug kind of leading on each side, and then we had one tug headed from the bow, kind of helping us get pushed in. Once the ship started to go into the dock, it was actually the lines that pulled us along into the dock, and the docking master, which was on top of the hangar top, was guiding that in. Once that happens, they have to start draining the water. Because you can imagine, the water was up, way up there, right? You can see before the steep steps there, that's what the water was up to. So this was all underwater. So they start draining it down. And they drain it to about 1 foot off the bottom, so where the dry dock blocks are. And then they have to slowly bring it down and make sure that the crush block is actually in place. So here you go. This block right here took literally the entirety of the weight of the ship when it crushed down. So super important. We talked about leadership and all that, right? You need to be physically strong. You need to be present. So you have to actually be here, and you have to be prepared for it. So the crush block is kind of symbolic of leadership as far as taking the entirety of the weight of the Navy, right? The weight of the ship, the responsibility. And what's really neat about this is if you see all of the blocks along here, when all the water was taken away, that's what was holding the ship. You didn't need all these supports.
Right.
This was from the wind, right? Like in case there was any wind, that's why they needed those supports and these supports. supports along the side here.
Right.
Yeah. The blue paint and all that, that is anti-fouling paint, so a lot of that is just to keep any sea urchins or anything like that off.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why you see the...
Amazing. And so what we're looking at right above us is one of the shafts.
Yeah, so this is the port shaft line right here. We're getting some work done on the shaft lines. It's about 55 meters long, the shaft line. It's broken into a number of different parts where it can be actually broken apart in order to do the maintenance. But in normal operation, you can see it just like this, but underneath the water.
How often would a Halifax class frigate end up in the dry dock like it is right now? I think this is a very, very unique. Sorry, I don't want to say unique. This is a somewhat rare event that we're very lucky to see here.
Yeah, so this was not expected. When the ship came out of dry dock from across the way, it was expected to stay in the water for about 5 years.
Wow.
So this is a unique thing, and usually if there's an emergent repair that needs to be taken care of, then this is why this dock is important.
Right.
Yeah, so
right.
It's kind of neat, you know, in that we're able to actually take care of our own ship in this respect. Right?
Yeah, and just for interest's sake, what exactly is happening? Like, what was the reason to come back into dry dock?
Yeah, so there needed to be some maintenance on one of the pitch for the ship. So essentially, just making sure that it was correct before the ship deploys for a long period.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's go forward though.
Yeah.
How much does the ship weigh again?
5 tons.
5
Yeah.
5,000.
5,000
tons. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Have you seen? So the keel is actually flat. Take a look at that. Like, it's flat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
You would think it would go into like a V,
Like a
and all
V
that.
shape,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
But it's flat. So, and I'm a diver, so I've been underneath these ships I don't know how many times, and I didn't know that until I came out. So the other cool thing is they had to drain the water out. Do you know what else was in here? Fish.
Oh really? No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, so they had to make sure that they could get the fish out.
Get the fish out without injuring them. That's wow.
So this part right here, you can see, obviously when it was in VSL, this was the area where the support beam was on, so they weren't able to paint it the same.
Oh right.
So it took a little bit of pressure, but these are all things that they've identified, said they'll be able to rectify that.
Oh, interesting.
Now look at this. Hey, so normally the numbers are pretty prominent up there, but look how big it is.
3 foot. It's massive.
This is definitely a unique opportunity that you would not normally be able to see.
It's phenomenal.
Here, I'll help you get up there.
Cheers.
Yeah. Yeah, so look, you see, this is what's really cool. Seeing the anchor there. See the national flag around.
That was amazing. This definitely gives a perspective of size of the Halifax class. So Justin, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about the maneuverability of the Halifax class, because the hull is designed to be quiet, and also the ship is designed to be maneuverable.
Yeah, so this is actually a great perspective as far as seeing how maneuverable the ship is. You see just from the front here, it's very narrow in the front, and then it kind of goes into the sides. You can see that the ballast on the sides there, as far as making sure that it can maneuver and all that. It's a unique design in that it's not meant to be stable like this. It's meant to really heel over with speed. It's almost like a Corvette, right? It usually, you can use 30 degrees of helm and you'd heel over, meaning like you would lean over about 12 to 15 degrees. I've been in sea state about 10 meter seas on the East Coast where you go over about 45 degrees. So imagine this is perfectly level right now.
Right.
Leaning over 45 degrees.
That's amazing.
When you're on the bridge, it's a little daunting, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And
Just be careful while it's slimy here.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
yeah, amazing. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for showing us this view, because this is an extremely rare event, and actually there's a I guess a draft mark, yeah. Tell you how deep we are, or how far down we are. But yeah, very, very cool perspective of the Halifax class warship that I don't think many people will see. Awesome.